Dismount the cable to isolate the various elements. Check the operation of the lever. Levers are simple, so problems with them are rare and usually the result of crash damage. Once the cable is released, you can inspect the operation of the brake. Does all the block hit the rim? Does the block hit the rim flat? Does the return spring, or springs, push both blocks sharply away from the rim? If the brake has two arms, V-brakes or cantilevers, do the springs push equally hard? Push each brake arm forwards and backwards to feel for looseness in the pivots. Inspect the cables. Are the inner cables shiny? Are the outer cables free from cracks or splits? Does the inner cable slide freely inside the outer cables? Pull the V-brake on hard using the lever. Clamp the arms of the V-brake together with one hand. Pull the noodle pipe away from the cable anchor point. Unhook the cable from the slot in the noodle carrier on the V-brake. Open the brakes, remove the wheel if convenient, to examine the faces of the brake blocks that press on the rim in braking. Any stones or glass trapped there will damage the rim. Remove them. You may also find fragments of aluminium that have come from the rim. Remove them with tweezers or use a file to clean the faces. Open the brake and/or remove the wheel. Take the block out of the brake if necessary and carve off any ridge with a knife. File the face smooth. The blocks may have a wear line. When the wear reaches the line or they start to look thin, replace them. Remove any retaining pins or screws that hold the shoes in the cartridge. Slide the shoe out of the open end of the cartridge. Replace the new shoes into the cartridges. Lubricate them with warm water if they are stiff. Refit screws or pins. Make sure when you remount them on the bike, the closed end points forwards. Otherwise, the shoes may fire out under heavy braking. The reach of the brake levers can usually be adjusted. A screw changes the point where the lever rests. This is useful for riders with small hands. You need to do this before setting up the brakes, as their operation will change when the lever can't release so far. Make sure you're working on the bolts that clamp the controls to the bars. Levers for gears and brakes will have other bolts on which the levers pivot. Don't loosen these by mistake. Loosen the clamp bolts so the controls can just be moved. Position the controls where they are easy to operate and comfortable to rest on. Clamp the controls tight in the new position. Make sure the controls still have room to function, that the levers can travel as far as necessary. Check the outer cable is seated in the lever, all stops, and the noodle pipe. Partially close the V-brake. Use the noodle pipe to pull the arm the inner cable is clamped in towards you and on. Push the arm with the noodle pipe carrier away from you and on. Slip the inner cable into its slot in the noodle pipe carrier and allow the return springs to pull the end of the pipe into the carrier. Pull the V-brake on to make sure the noodle is seated. Apply the V-brakes and spin the wheel to check the V-brake works and doesn't stick in the closed position or rub on the wheel rim. Pull the front V-brake on. Push the bike forwards. The back wheel must lift off the ground. Pull the back V-brake on. Push the bike backwards. The front wheel must lift off the ground. When the V-brake lever is pulled as hard as possible, there must be at least another 20 mm of travel available. You can pull harder when you're frightened, and the system must be able to cope with this. Release the lever as gently as possible. If the system has any tendency to stick on, this will reveal it. Lift the wheel and spin it gently. It must rotate freely and come to rest in a free position, not stuck against the V-brake. The outer cables need to be free from splits or cracks. The inner cables must not be frayed. Check for broken strands inside the lever and where the cable is clamped on the V-brake mechanism. Look for any weaknesses or signs of leaks in hydraulic cables. This is most important immediately after a crash. If the system is leaking for any length of time, it won't operate. The blocks need to be held firmly, must hit the rim and not the tyre. There must be enough material left in the blocks to comfortably last the duration of the proposed trip. Rims also wear away when used as a braking surface. Some rims have a groove to help diagnose the point when they need replacing.